Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Team Venom Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Rory Bailey. This week's is another From the Vault special, and this is a exclusive interview we did with Al Snow back, around 9 years ago. Al Snow's a proper wrestling legend, currently owns OVW. At the time, he'd invested in what was then called Slam Wrestling, which became the ASWA UK, which was Al Snow Wrestling Academy UK, and then eventually ended up being called OVW UK. And that UK company is one that was run by one of my friends. It's a place that I've wrestled at myself. And this was at a point where I'd stopped wrestling for a while, and the interview with Al and the whole evening around it basically led to me then going having a nice little run with that company after that point, which was quite nice. But Al Snow is one of my all-time favourites. I originally met him at the first Comic-Con I went to. He was a big supporter of Team Venom. I've got a photo of him somewhere in a Team Venom wrestling t-shirt because he was really cool. And then I met him at the TNA British Boot Camp tryout that I had, which didn't go too well, but Al was great. And yeah, we had this awesome interview that I'm going to play for you in a second. And afterwards, I got basically told that I should wrestle for his UK thing, and did for a while, which was cool. But anyway, without further ado, here is a wonderful little interview that we did with the legendary Al Snow. First thing I'd like to ask you about is obviously the Al Snow Wrestling Academy.
Okay.
You were a major trainer for WWE's Tough Enough when that went off about 10-15 years ago. Trainer at OVW at TNA, one of the British Boot Camp guys.
Yes.
And there's a few of the TNA guys that I've spoken to that have regarded you quite highly because of your training skills.
Oh.
One being
good.
Jigsaw, for example. We interviewed him last year, and
really?
He was telling you about how he got his name and what he almost ended up calling, but I can't say because minus.
Oh. But, yeah, almost calling it.
Effing Puzzle Face.
Oh, there you go. I probably wouldn't want to call
Classic.
it. But can't really use that on TV, can you?
No, not really. But it's one of those is where it must be nice to have such a good reputation as a trainer amongst quite a lot of the guys, as well as the actual companies themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very pleased, and you know, it's actually very satisfying to have a good reputation at all. I mean, you know, that's all really I have. It's my name and nothing more. So I've spent going on 35 years trying to develop and create that reputation, and I do absolutely everything I can to try to protect it as much as possible, because I value it, and especially as a trainer, because I believe that if I leave any legacy in the business, it's going to be all the I call them my kids, all the kids that I've trained, that will go on to have a career and be successful themselves and add to the professional wrestling business. So, so I'm thrilled that people hold me in any kind of esteem at all. It's very complimentary.
What made you decide to do the training academy in the UK?
The reason that I decided to do it in the UK was a couple of factors. The biggest one is that I consider wrestling academies or wrestling schools or wrestling gyms as a place of higher learning. I truly consider them to be the same as a university, in no different fashion. You're going to a wrestling school or wrestling academy or whatever because you have a desire to pursue a career as a professional wrestler, and as such, you know, it's not a hobby, it's not a pastime. You need to be taught by teachers that have experience. Experience is the key to everything. You can have as much information as you want about a subject, but if you don't have a commensurate amount of experience, you don't have real knowledge. I don't care what anyone says. You have all the information you want in the world, and no experience, you have an opinion. You don't have knowledge. And opinions are the lowest form of human knowledge because it takes little or no information to conjugate it. Now, I know the popular thing is that for everyone says, I'm entitled to my opinion. Yeah, you're entitled to keep it shut. Because everyone wants to espouse their opinion in a public forum as if it's fact, as if it's actual knowledge, when really, to be quite honest, if you don't have experience to go along with it, it's not knowledge. So, throughout, there are some places here in England and in Europe, but predominantly in the United States, there are wrestling schools or gyms or academies or whatever you want to call them that basically are training or teaching people based off of just information, no real experience. And I feel that if you're coming and you're truly serious and have a passion about wanting to have a career in professional wrestling, you're entitled for what you are paying to have the benefit of real knowledge. So I decided to do the school in England because I knew of several people that I had worked with, not only training them, but also watching them perform and knowing of their amount of experience, that I could have access to them in one general location. And in the United States, being a much bigger country, that's a lot more difficult for me to pull a group of trainers, or for want of a better term, professors, into one area and make use of them on a regular basis. Being able to do that in England allowed me to not have to take on all of the responsibilities myself of literally training every single student, because I can't right now. And it's an advantage in the sense that instead of turning out clones, little Al Snow clones, if you're a student, you get the benefit of learning from me. You get the benefit of learning from Doug Williams, who is well-traveled and has just a ton of wealth of experience. You get the benefit of learning from Joe Legend. You get the benefit of learning from Luke Dutton. You get the benefit of learning from, we just made an association with Andy Baker, who has a ton of experience. John Klinger, Bad Bones from Germany. Joe Legend, did I mention Joe Legend? Twice is too much. James Mason, who is phenomenal, is amazing, has a wealth of experience and knowledge. And philosophically, we're all the same. Philosophically, we all teach the same, but we all have our own way of teaching and have our own techniques. We have our own styles. We have our own. So you can take a little bit of me, a little bit of that person, a little bit of that person, and then develop and find your own voice, which is integral into the success of being a professional wrestler. Is finding your own voice in the ring a lot quicker, because you get so many different inputs, and you get them from people who genuinely have experience and understanding of what the art is that they're teaching. For instance, and I won't belabor the point, but if you were to go to a university, you want to be an accountant. And this is what happens in 99% of the wrestling schools, is that if you went to the university and said, I want to be an accountant, they go, great, pay your tuition, terrific. Who's my professor? Well, your professor is great. He's terrific. He's so talented. He knows everything about numbers. Oh, really? Well, what kind of experience does he have? Who does he work for? What companies does he work for? Well, he's not really worked for anybody. He's only worked for us. But he's at the top of his class. He was amazing. He's been fantastic. He's been doing it for 3 or 4 years. Well, but what does he know that he can teach me based on his own mistakes and his experience that now I can benefit from? Well, he's never been anywhere. He's never actually worked for another company. So therefore, he doesn't really know anything. He doesn't really have any genuine experience that he can pass on to me. And that's what happens in most of the professional wrestling schools. And at the academy that I've set up, that, I believe, is what makes us do it.
What's been your favourite experience overall as a trainer so
far? Watching all the students that I have trained succeed and reach different levels of success. And I don't equate success on just being able to perform for WWE or for TNA, but the real meaning of success, which is to be able to do what you love to do for a living and not do anything else. And I have lots of students that have been able to do that due to what I've taught them. And then to watch others go on and succeed and go up levels and perform in WWE on different levels is even more gratifying.
One student in particular that we've seen feud with recently on TNA was Grado from the British Boot Camp Experience.
Yeah.
As a fan watching that, someone who's been a fan of Grado over in the UK as well.
I'm sorry.
No, it's one of those things that's genuinely awesome to see that not only you got it. I was also a Al Snow fan as well, but obviously, but it's awesome to see you come out of not retired, but out of your backstage role and more into a prominent role on screen with TNA to help promote someone like Grado. And it is really genuinely cool to see that sort of thing happen.
Well, thank you.
Is there anyone in TNA at the moment that's up and coming that you would like to lock horns with?
I mean, there's, all the guys are very talented, and if I were to have the opportunity to do the right business, by all means, I'd be more than happy to, work with quite a few of the guys. They all, would provide a different challenge for each individual person because they all have their own individual style. So I'd have to adjust and adapt and, change up my approach to do whatever they needed me to do with them. So, yeah, I mean, I'd be excited to do that with just about anybody. I'd love to wrestle Bobby Lashley. I think I could really help him in a lot of ways. And, we now have the Grand Championship or something, I think it's called.
Yeah.
I'd love to wrestle those matches because the more structure and the more definitive set of rules you have for a match, it's easier to tell a story. And I think that I would succeed.
Ladies and gentlemen, this evening's wrestling will commence in 5 minutes.
Thank
minutes,
you.
please.
I think that would. No, I'm fine. It's not like I'm going on. I think that I could do really well in that kind of setting.
Okay.
That was a really long-winded answer.
That's good.
Has there been anyone throughout your career that you wished you would have wrestled?
Has there been anyone? Oh God, I would have when Luke Thez was still prominent, and still performing. I would have been happy to have gotten the opportunity. Johnny Saint in England, Mick McManus here in England, Mark Rollerball Rocco. I would have loved to have gotten a chance to. Back in the States, I would have loved to have gotten to. I never got to work with Kurt Angle, wrestle Kurt Angle. I would have loved to have wrestled. I never got to wrestle Ray Mysterio. To wrestle him. John Cena because I'd have made more money. Undertaker because I'd have made more money. Yeah, I mean those type of guys. There's plenty of guys, but the fact is that no matter who I wrestle, it doesn't matter what the size of the show. It doesn't matter the amount of audience that I perform in front of. It doesn't matter if it's here or somewhere else in the world. I love to just go out and do what I love to do, and I've been lucky enough to get to do it continuously. I mean, I've done this and nothing else for a living for 34 and a half years.
Wow.
So at some point, somebody's going to realize, hey, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing. But as long as they ain't figured it out, I'm just going to keep doing it. As long as they keep paying me, why would I show up? I mean, think about it. I am a grown adult man who basically feeds his family, fake fighting other men in their underwear for money. That's pretty awesome. I've worked a real job my entire life. So can't get any better than that.
Like most wrestling fans, big fan of the Attitude Era, and you had some memorable feuds and tag teams. For example, you teamed with Steve Blackman, Mick Coley for a while.
Uh-huh.
There was the infamous rivalry in his books.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Prior to that, you were also, prior to the Attitude Era, you were teaming with Marty Jannetty for a while.
Yes.
What was your favourite period of tag team?
God, everybody was enjoyable. Everybody had a different thing. I think, out of the ring, Steve and I that was the most fun because, it was he was such a great straight man because he legitimately was Steve Blackman, the Lethal Weapon. He was like, what you saw on the screen was Steve. I can't tell you how many times we went to do those little vignettes and he'd say things like, we showed up at the old folks home the one time when I was going to have him do stand-up comedy at the old folks home, and they were all in the activity room singing together, and they were doing a sing-along, and he's starting to pace, and he's twitching, and I'm like, what is wrong with you? And he goes, just make him stop. And I'm like, what? He's like, I hate sing-alongs. And he was serious, he wanted to go in and kill them all because they were having a sing-along. You know what I mean? And it just was the craziest thing. And numerous times we'd have conversations where I'd be telling him,
commence in 1 minute's time. 1 minute, please.
What we were going to do, and his question would always be, well, then why don't I just kill him? And I'd be like, well, no, you can't do that. That's not funny. You have to. I just punch him. No, don't hit this person. And that was probably the most fun because he was such a great straight man. Sometimes he didn't realize the joke that was going on. So. And it was so popular that it actually was the highest rated segments on SmackDown at the time. Every time we did one of those little backstage things, these little vignettes, it was the highest rated segments because of the interaction between the two of us. So, it was awesome.
That's one of my own favourites. With Chester, was it Chester McCheesington?
Oh, Chester McCheesington, yeah. That was one that kind of went sideways. I didn't expect, you pitch something out, and then you don't expect that they're actually going to do it, and then they show up with a guy in a cheese outfit, and I'm like, oh my God, yeah. You know what I mean? Okay, I guess we'll do this. But I just kind of threw it out there. I was like, what we need to do now is we need to have an actual guy in a cheese outfit. I show up at WrestleMania, it's like, there's a guy with a cheese outfit. All right, I guess that's what you want. But I don't think Vince wanted that. I know the writers did. So.
The last question for you. How did Head originate?
Head originated because at the time I was in WWE or WWF at the time, and through a lot of my own mistakes, not taking advantage of opportunities that were presented to me, I was getting very frustrated, and things weren't working. And at that time, you were under a contract that you only got paid when you worked. You weren't given a downside guarantee or anything like that. And so I was not happy. I'd spent 2 years floundering, and I'd had recently the run with Marty, and then it had come to an end, and I was right back where I started from, and I was like, I can't do this. So I sent in my request for my release from my contract, and then to kind of teach me a lesson, they rolled over my contract for another year, which simply just pissed me off even more. And so I had went to Paul Heyman and then one of my good friends, Chris Candido, that was tied with Paul Heyman, and kind of begged to go to ECW. And so I was put on loan to ECW because I was still in contract with WWE, and I went there with the sole idea that I would have to go there to get myself over. And Paul had no real plans or anything for me, and I showed up. I just started going kind of crazy whenever I would lose on WWE, because I figured anybody that, Leif Cassidy was that happy, he had to be crazy. And I figured if anyone knew who I was as a real wrestling fan, at that time I'd been wrestling for about 14 years, that anybody had been pursuing something that long and not having what I thought was real success would eventually have a nervous breakdown. So I started trying to show that in the ring as much as I could, and nothing was working. And so I was reading a book on abnormal psychology, and there was a case study of a woman who was paranoid schizophrenic, and she had transference disorder, meaning she believed that the inanimate objects that were speaking to her, like the chair or the table, they were crazy like her. So I was fascinated by that. And then I remembered Mick had this styrofoam head at one time with Bob Holly and Sid Vicious, and we were all riding together, and he had a styrofoam head in his bag that he used to get his mankind mask. And Midian had thrown it up in the ceiling fan in Montreal, and he clipped the mouth, and he made like a little cut in the mouth. And he was acting like he was going to do sexual things with it back at the room, calling me a name. And that kind of flashed in my head for a brief second, him joking around with that. And I went, and I found a styrofoam head in the backstage area. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to carry it to the ring, and I'm going to treat this as if it's a real person and just interact with it and talk to it, and that's all right. And
yeah, sure.
That way people would be able to visually see what I was talking to and what I was interacting with. Because I had tried talking to myself, and it didn't work. And then it just clicked. It just took off from there. So I started with just a styrofoam face and styrofoam head. And then I started getting these ones that were styrofoam that had a little plastic face, but it kept getting cracked. Because every time I lose it, and then finally, Mikey Whipwreck and Spike Dudley were at a show in Connecticut, and people had brought an assortment of weapons for New Jack to use. In there was an actual beauty salon head that they gave to me, and then that was it. I carried that from then on, and it just clicked. People loved it. Why, I don't know. I do know why, and that's because all the frustration, all the anger, all the resentment that I had about where I was at career-wise, I channeled and made it like the head was saying it whenever I would do promos and things like that. And because it was real and I believed it and people could feel it, I know that that's what got it over. And that it was entertaining, because whenever I did it again, the way the vignette was always done was everything was normal around me. The only abnormal thing was that I was sitting there talking to my head. So it was real. And it worked, thank God. You know, and then unfortunately, I got lost when I went back to WWE because of my own mistakes of trying to be a great wrestler as opposed to being a great attraction, and realizing what the thing was that got me over and continuing to move forward. So I had plenty of opportunities in WWE that I just didn't take full advantage of because I focused on the right things. And if I'd have focused on the correct things, I would have had a much more successful run in WWE. And I did all right. I think I've done very well for myself, but I think I could have done even better if I had somebody to tell me, hey, pay attention and focus on the right things. And that's where I always tell people that I don't teach or train anyone based on what I know. I teach and train people based on what I've made mistakes. And I've made far more mistakes than anyone else will ever get an opportunity to make these things. So, and the same goes for the other, instructors, because I believe that again, that experience is what's so valuable, because they've made all those mistakes, so they can now tell you, don't do this, and the reason you don't do it is because I've already done it, and it's not working. And, that's it. And that's, again, goes back to why I decided to locate people, because I had access to so many trainers who have a certain amount of experience, and not experience just wrestling, but wrestling for a living. When you have to pay the bills based on your performance, your whole mindset changes. As opposed to, and I'm not knocking anybody, but opposed to a person who wrestles on the weekends and then doesn't wrestle again until the next weekend, but then goes to another job now it's not important how many people show up. Now it's not important that